everybody. Welcome back to our Season 2 Masterclass. We are concluding our season with one more episode. And as a recap, this Season 2 is all focused on in vitro efficacy studies. I'm Morgan Drohan, a technical marketing professional here at Active Concepts, and I'm here again with Maureen Drumright. She was on our last episode talking about angiogenesis. As a quick recap of Maureen's background, she is our Director of R&D, which means she oversees all new product development. She's in charge of overseeing all efficacy and safety testing, regulatory compliance, and also assists in technical customer responses. So to end this season, we thought it would be absolutely necessary to discuss one of the most popular marketing claims on finished formulas, which is antioxidant protection. Here at Active Concepts, we have 3 different studies to test for antioxidant properties, and they are called ORAC, ROS, and DPPH. So while all of them aim to prove antioxidant benefits, why do we have 3 different studies? And so with that, we can dive right in. Maureen, I think it's necessary to start by clarifying first what it means for an active ingredient to act as an antioxidant or have antioxidant properties.
Yes, of course, and thanks for having me again. By definition, an antioxidant is a substance that will inhibit oxidation and fight free radicals in our body.
So I feel a recap of Chem 1 coming on.
We definitely need a quick, solid foundation of Chem 1. So as we know, everything is made up of atoms, and atoms are orbited by pairs of electrons. If something were to disturb an atom, the electron pairing could break up. And having an atom with a single electron is damaging. Atoms without an electron pairing are called free radicals and can be really harmful to our skin.
How so?
The process of atoms losing electrons is called oxidation. While this is a normal chemical process that occurs within our body, the accumulation of extra free radicals can accelerate the signs of aging and build up skin pollution. What happens is these free radicals attempt to restore the balance of their lost electron by stealing electrons from healthy atoms, and therefore causing damage to healthy skin cells. So to summarize, the chemical process of oxidation causes the production of free radicals, and free radicals present themselves as signs of skin aging. Dark spots, sagging skin, fine lines, and wrinkles.
Okay, so what causes oxidation? I know you just said this can be a normal chemical process in our body, but I guess what causes the accumulation of these free radicals?
Unfortunately, we are exposed to factors every day that increase oxidation, the main one being sun exposure, but also cleaning products, pesticides, smoke, even dust contribute to the production of free radicals.
Okay, so I can start expecting wrinkles by tomorrow then.
Not quite. While there's no way to really rid the body of all free radicals, we can reduce the amount of damage and the rate of damage by incorporating antioxidants either through our diet or through skincare. Antioxidants will bind free radicals and give them their missing electrons so that they don't try to steal electrons from our healthy skin cells.
Okay, cool. I'll save my emergency esthetician appointment for a later date then. So while we know healthy skin starts from the inside out by first ensuring a healthy diet full of ACE vitamins, let's talk about how active ingredients in personal care products can act as antioxidants and how we at Active Concepts test for that antioxidant activity. So we currently offer 3 efficacy studies to test for that. We have ORAC, ROS, and DPPH. Maureen, can you give us a brief summary about each of those tests?
Definitely. First off, all 3 tests analyze the ability of an active to quench free radicals, or reactive oxygen species. While each has the same end goal, all 3 have different methods of testing antioxidant capacity.
Okay, so perhaps we'll start with ORAC.
Sure. Since free radicals are detrimental to cellular structures and functional molecules such as DNA, proteins, and lipids, an ORAC assay, or an oxygen radical absorbance capacity assay, quantitatively measures a sample's ability to quench free radicals that have the potential to react with and damage cellular components.
Okay, so how would we measure this?
An ORAC assay is basically a reactive oxygen species generator. It is based upon the effect of peroxyl radicals that are generated by the thermal decomposition of what's called AAPH on the signal intensity from the fluorescent probe or fluorescein in the presence of an oxygen radical absorbing substance.
Okay, so we calculate this value by?
The antioxidant protection of the sample is calculated by comparing it to a set of known standards. Therefore, the degree of change is indicative of the amount of radical damage and the presence of antioxidants, resulting in an inhibition of the free radical damage. When we are looking at an ORAC graph, we are directly measuring antioxidant capacity. So ideally, as the concentration of the tested active increases, so will the antioxidant capacity.
Okay, so this is pretty dense information, and we're definitely starting off strong. As this is a lot to take in, and I'm a visual learner myself, as we go through each of these assays, there will be an example graph shown for our viewers as they're being explained by Maureen to visually see the difference in how the graphs are presented. So to briefly summarize ORAC, standards with a known antioxidant capacity are prepared, along with different concentrations of our tested active that were combined with fluorescent, exposed to AAPH to purposefully generate reactive oxygen species. And then the fluorescent measurements are taken to quantify the presence of antioxidants shown as free radical inhibition to the fluorescent.
Exactly.
Okay.
These seem like simple assays at first glance, but when you really dissect them, you realize the depth behind them. Are you ready for Ross?
I guess let's get to it.
So Ross assay, or the reactive oxygen species scavenging assay, is based on the same principle that accumulating excessive free radicals is damaging to the skin. However, instead of measuring antioxidant capacity like we do ORAC, we are quantitatively measuring the amount of reactive oxygen species, or ROS, that are present.
Okay, so conversely to ORAC, we want to see that amount decreasing.
Exactly. So how in ORAC we wanted to see the graph increasing at antioxidant capacity, this time we want to see ROS graph decreasing because we ideally want the levels of free radicals to diminish.
Okay, got it. So can you explain the ROS assay's procedure?
Of course. The ROS assay uses human dermal fibroblasts. 2 cell permanent dyes, CellRox, orange reagent, and Hoche are used in conjunction to provide a specific and quantitative method for determining reactive oxygen levels. CellRox orange reagent fluoresces brightly when bound to reactive oxygen species, which indicates oxidative stress, while the other fluorescence binds to the nuclear DNA to indicate cellular nuclei. So by displaying the relative fluorescence units from both of these reagents, the amount of reactive oxygen species can be quantified at the cellular level.
I just want to confirm one thing before we move on. So at the beginning, you mentioned reactive oxygen species are normally produced at low levels as part of our body's natural chemical processes. But when high levels of reactive oxygen species are produced, that's when the effects become negative. So if this ROS assay is using human dermal fibroblasts, they would naturally already have some of those reactive oxygen species present. So how do we know when that threshold, gets crossed as to where the amount of reactive oxygen species present becomes damaging?
That's a great question, Morgan. It is actually unknown at which point the amount of reactive oxygen species switches from necessary homeostatic signaling to something more harmful. Because of this, we create a supraphysiological environment that guarantees the oxidative stress will be at high enough levels to exert those negative effects by overrunning the endogenous antioxidant capacity of the cells. By overpowering this endogenous antioxidant capacity, any reduction in ROS will be attributed to an exogenous factor, aka the ingredient being tested.
Okay, so while this assay is performed on human cells, this sort of environment would never be found naturally.
Right. So if a product exerts an antioxidant effect in the supraphysiological environment we create during the ROS assay, which has much higher levels of reactive oxygen species than found in vivo, we can guarantee that the product will work extremely well at the cellular level where the reactive oxygen species levels are much lower.
Okay, my brain is starting to hurt a bit.
Yeah, it's a doozy, but you're getting it. However, we do have one more to touch on, and that's DPPH.
All right, I'm ready. Save the best for last.
So DPPH is a well-protected organic nitrogen radical that provides a quick assessment of a test substance's potential antioxidant capacity through electron and hydrogen atom transfer. DPPH naturally possesses a deep purple color and has a strong absorption around 517 nanometers. Therefore, we can use colorimetric analysis when we analyze this. When antioxidants encounter DPPH, the color shifts from a deep purple to a yellow color in proportion to the radical scavenging capacity of the substance, which is evaluated by monitoring the decrease of its absorbance at that wavelength. The kind of graph you will see in this assay is quantitatively measuring the percentage of radical scavenging activity. Therefore, like ORAC, we are ideally wanting to see an increase in the radical scavenging activity as a percentage or a concentration of the tested active increases.
Okay, that makes sense. So here's a question. We have all three of these assays with the same end goal, measuring an active's antioxidant potential. If one active performs well on one assay, does that mean it is sure to perform well on the others?
Do you want a simple answer or the complicated answer?
You know, in the true spirit of having these masterclass series, let's become the master of these antioxidant studies. Fire away.
So if an active performs well on one of the assays, it actually does not necessarily mean that it will perform well on the others. This can be attributed to the inherent differences in the three assays themselves and an active's given antioxidant quenching mechanism of action. So the DPPH and ORAC assays utilize fundamentally different radicals to test antioxidant capacity. Since I know how much you've missed high school chemistry, here's a pop quiz. What kind of radical does DPPH use?
Oh, how I've missed school, especially pop quizzes. So DPPH utilizes a nitrogen-centered radical.
Perfect. So this nitrogen-centered radical site is highly protected. All right, what about ORAC?
I can feel my testing anxiety coming back. ORAC uses peroxyl radicals.
A+.
Okay.
So ORAC utilizes peroxyl radicals on a continual basis that are not protected. Another key difference is that the DPPH radical is rare in vivo, whereas with ORAC, peroxyl radicals are abundant in vivo.
Okay, pause. Can you explain why the DPPH radicals are rarer than ORAC's radicals?
Well, I don't have a concrete answer, but I can try. So the best guess would be evolutionary biology or physiology. The ORAC's peroxyl radicals are just more physiologically present, whereas with DPPH's nitrogen-centered radicals, those are not as present. We most likely evolved to limit the production of DPPH radicals since it is very hard to scavenge.
Okay, thank you. Is the pop quiz over?
One last question. So what is used in the Ross assay?
Okay, well, if I remember correctly, the radicals produced by the Ross assay are heterogeneous and abundant in vivo, but are mainly limited to intracellular space.
Exactly. And while this might be seen as a weakness in the Ross assay, the strength of the model is that it involves human cells.
Whereas ORAC and DPPH are in chemico and are not performed on human cells.
Correct.
Okay, so that addresses the inherent differences of the assays themselves, but can we dive into their mechanisms of action?
Sure. So the composition of the radicals ultimately decides how an antioxidant will quench the radical itself. And the composition of an antioxidant dictates what radicals it has the ability to quench. So there are two different mechanisms through which antioxidants can quench radicals.
Let me take a guess. It involves electrons.
Yes. So one, through the transfer of a hydrogen atom, or two, transferring a single electron or more to reduce the target compound. Due to the difference in radicals between the assays, both of these quenching mechanisms occur during the DPPH assay, whereas ORAC strictly examines just one of them. So as a result, the DPPH assay is going to greatly underestimate the radical quenching potential of a substance in vivo, whereas ORAC will provide a better model of antioxidant capacity in vivo for a particular peroxyl radical utilized.
Okay, wait a minute. So if DPPH uses both HAT and SET radical quenching methods, why would the quenching potential be greatly underestimated? I think I would off the bat think that using both quenching methods would be the most accurate?
That's another great question. So not quite though. While DPPH does measure both HAT and SET measurements are known to have variability given electrons are very sensitive to water content, pH, temperature, light exposure, and oxygen. Despite the DPPH assay measuring two quenching methods and taking into account the potential variation associated with one of those mechanisms, the DPPH assay demonstrates the antioxidant capacity specifically for one radical that is very hard to completely scavenge and only makes up a small portion of the total radicals present physiologically.
Okay, and although ORAC only uses one quenching method, those peroxyl radicals that are generated make up a larger portion of the total radicals present physiologically, which is why it's a better model of antioxidant capacity.
Completely on the mark. And lastly, as previously mentioned for ROS, this is supraphysiological environment that would never actually occur in vivo. So the ROS assay provides a more general, non-specific antioxidant capacity, but that will work extremely well at the cellular level.
Okay, this is definitely a lot to take in, but also so helpful in distinguishing the differences between these three assays and why we actually have those different testing methods.
It sure is. Just think of all the antioxidant assays as different vehicles, like a bus, a dump truck, and sports car. They're all vehicles, but all have different strengths and weaknesses and purposes depending on a particular situation.
Well, thank you so much, Maureen, for your back-to-back appearances on our masterclass and so eloquently distinguishing the difference between our three antioxidant assays, ORAC, ROS, and DPPH. I'm Morgan Drohan, technical marketing professional here at Active Concepts. And thank you guys so much for the support for our Season 2 Masterclass Series, where we deep dove into some of our in vitro efficacy studies. We hope to see everybody in a few months for Season 3. Bye!